The fluorescent lights in the waiting room hummed a constant, low note that seemed to match the vibration of anxiety in Maya Chan's chest. She checked her phone for the third time in 5 minutes, not because she expected any messages, but because staring at the screen felt safer than looking at the other patients who seemed to belong here in ways she wasn't sure she did. At 26, Maya had become an expert at avoidance. She'd perfected the art of looking busy when group conversations started, of taking the long way to avoid the break room at work, of ordering groceries online to escape the simple terror of checkout small talk. But her carefully constructed world of minimal interaction had finally crumbled 3 weeks ago when her manager, Sarah, had pulled her aside after another team meeting where Maya had sat silent despite having the exact solution everyone was desperately seeking. "I need to see more engagement from you," Sarah had said, not unkindly, but with the firmness of someone who'd run out of patience. "You're brilliant, Maya, but if you can't contribute to discussions or collaborate effectively, I'm not sure this role is the right fit." Maya had nodded, throat tight, unable to explain that she'd written and rewritten her ideas 17 times in her notebook, that she'd practiced speaking them aloud in the bathroom mirror, that the words simply refused to emerge when all eyes turned to her. "Maya Chun?" The voice belonged to a young woman with warm brown skin and scrubs decorated with tiny books, a detail that made Maya smile despite her nerves. She followed the nurse down a hallway lined with motivational posters about mental health awareness, each one feeling like a gentle reminder that she wasn't the only person struggling to function in a world that demanded constant verbal participation. The examination room was smaller than she'd expected, painted in calming sage green with a single window that looked out onto a garden where she could see a few patients walking slowly along a winding path. Maya settled into the chair across from the desk, noting the diplomas on the wall, the bookshelf filled with volumes on anxiety disorders, and a small framed photo of what appeared to be a therapy dog. Dr. Sarah Kim entered with the kind of presence that immediately put Maya at ease, unhurried, genuinely present, carrying herself with the confidence of someone who'd learned to be comfortable with difficult conversations. She appeared to be in her early 30s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an easy smile that reached all the way to her eyes. "Maya, I'm Dr. Kim. Thank you for coming in today." She sat down across from Maya, not immediately reaching for her notepad or computer. "I know this can't have been easy." Maya opened her mouth to respond, then felt the familiar sensation of her throat closing, words dissolving before they could take shape. She made a small sound of frustration and looked down at her hands. "That's okay," Dr. Kim said immediately. "Would it help if I shared something with you first? Sometimes it's easier to open up when you know you're not alone in this experience." Maya nodded, grateful for anything that might ease the pressure building in her chest. "I chose to specialize in anxiety disorders because I lived with severe social anxiety throughout my teens and early 20s, Dr. Kim began. I couldn't speak in classes, couldn't make phone calls, couldn't even say here during attendance without my voice shaking. For years, I thought I was fundamentally broken." Maya's eyes widened. This composed, articulate doctor had experienced what she was going through? "I see that surprise," Dr. Kim said gently. "It's hard to believe that someone who seems confident could understand what it's like to feel trapped by your own mind. But I spent years feeling like I was watching life happen around me, wanting desperately to participate, but unable to break through the invisible barrier." Something in Maya's chest began to loosen, not of shame and isolation that had been so tight for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe freely. "The thing that changed everything for me," Dr. Kim continued, "was learning that social anxiety isn't a character flaw or a choice. It's a medical condition that responds to treatment, just like diabetes or high blood pressure. You're not weak for struggling with this, Maya. You're brave for seeking help." "How ... Maya began, then stopped, surprised the word had emerged. "How did I get better?" Dr. Kim asked. Maya nodded, very slowly, with a lot of support. "Therapy, medication when needed, and most importantly, learning that my worth as a person wasn't determined by my ability to speak up in every situation." Over the next hour, Maya found herself talking more freely than she had in months. Dr. Kim's combination of professional expertise and personal understanding created a space where her words felt safe, where her struggles felt valid rather than shameful. "I'm going to lose my job," Maya finally admitted, her voice small but steady. "I can't speak up in meetings, can't present ideas, can't even ask questions when I need help. My manager says I'm not collaborative enough." "That must be incredibly painful," Dr. Kim said, and Maya could hear genuine empathy in her voice. "Especially when you clearly have so much to contribute." "My family doesn't understand," Maya continued. "They keep saying I just need to be more confident, to push through it. They love me, but they think I'm choosing to be this way." "Social anxiety is an invisible disability," Dr. Kim said gently. "People who haven't experienced it often can't. Understand that you're not choosing to be silent or anxious any more than someone with a broken leg is choosing to need crutches." As their session continued, Dr. Kim outlined a treatment plan that felt both comprehensive and manageable. Cognitive behavioral therapy with a specialist who understood selective mutism, potential medication options to explore, and gradual exposure. Exercises designed to help Maya rebuild her confidence in social situations. "But here's what I want you to know," Dr. Kim said as their time together drew to a close. "You are not broken. You are not less valuable because you process social situations differently. And with the right support, you can absolutely learn to manage this condition in ways that allow you to live the life you want." "Dr. Kim," Maya said, her voice growing stronger, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you still struggle with anxiety sometimes?" Dr. Kim smiled, and for a moment, Maya could see the young woman who had once been as frightened and isolated as she felt now. "Every day," she said honestly. "But I've learned that managing anxiety isn't about making it disappear completely. It's about developing tools and strategies that help you live fully despite the anxiety, and surrounding yourself with people who understand and support your journey." "I can't afford ... Maya began, then stopped, embarrassed about discussing money. "Maya," Dr. Kim said gently, "I'm going to connect you with our community mental health program. Good mental health care should be available to everyone, regardless of their ability to pay. Your treatment will be covered." Maya felt tears spilling over as the weight of years of suffering and shame finally began to lift. "Why would you do that for someone you just met?" "Because 8 years ago, I was sitting where you're sitting now, feeling hopeless and alone," Dr. Kim replied. "Someone helped me when I couldn't help myself, and now I have the opportunity to pass that gift forward." 8 months later, Maya walked into the conference room at Riverside Community Center with her shoulders straight and her voice ready. She'd been working there for 3 months as a program coordinator, a position that Dr. Kim had helped her find through a network of colleagues who understood the value of diverse perspectives and experiences. She still experienced anxiety, still had days when speaking felt challenging, but she now had tools to manage those moments instead of being controlled by them. More importantly, she'd learned that her sensitivity and thoughtfulness qualities that came partly from her struggles with anxiety were actually strengths in her work, helping connect community members with resources and support. "Good morning, everyone," Maya said clearly as she began her presentation on the center's new peer support program. "Today, I want to talk about how we can reach people who feel invisible in our community and why those voices matter so much." As she spoke, Maya thought about Dr. Kim, who had not only provided her with medical treatment, but had shown her that success could be measured not just in professional achievements, but in the courage to be vulnerable, the wisdom to seek help, and the generosity to help others once you found your own healing. Sometimes the most powerful medicine isn't found in prescription bottles or therapy textbooks, but in the simple recognition that we're not alone in our struggles, that someone else has walked the difficult path we're traveling, and that healing is possible when we find the courage to trust others with our pain. In a world that often mistakes silence for weakness, Maya Chen had learned that true strength sometimes comes not from speaking loudly, but from speaking honestly, and that the most important conversations often begin with the simple admission that we need help finding our voice. 2 years later, Maya stood before the mirror in the small office that had become her sanctuary within the Riverside Community Center. The nameplate on her desk read, Maya Chen, Director of Peer Support Services, a title that still felt surreal. Some mornings. Today was different, though. Today, she was about to do something that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. She adjusted her blazer, a deep blue that Dr. Kim had once mentioned brought out her eyes, and took a steady breath. The anxiety was still there, humming quietly in her chest, like an old friend she'd learned to coexist with, but it no longer controlled her movements or stole her words. A soft knock interrupted her preparation. Maya, they're ready for you in the main conference room. Thanks, Jessica. I'll be right there. The main conference room was packed with people Maya had come to know well over the past 2 years. Social workers, therapists, community leaders, and most importantly, peer support specialists, people who had walked similar paths and chosen to guide others along the way. At the front of the room sat Dr. Kim, now serving on the center's advisory board, her familiar smile providing the same comfort it had during those early, difficult sessions. Good morning, everyone, Maya began, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had learned to trust her own words. Welcome to our quarterly Peer Support Network meeting. Today, we're going to discuss something that's been on my mind for a while, the power of shared experience in healing. She clicked to her first slide, which showed a simple statistic. 70% of people with anxiety disorders report feeling completely alone in their experience. 3 years ago, I was part of that 70%, Maya continued. I sat in a waiting room, much like the one downstairs, convinced that I was fundamentally broken, that my inability to speak up in meetings or engage in simple social interactions meant I was somehow less than everyone else around me. She paused, scanning the room. Several participants were nodding, recognition flickering in their eyes. What changed everything for me wasn't just therapy or medication, though those were crucial. It was meeting someone who had walked the same path I was struggling down, someone who could look at me and say, I understand, and mean it completely. Dr. Kim smiled from her seat in the front row, a gesture that felt like a warm hug across the space. That's why we're here today, Maya continued. Not just to discuss best practices or review funding reports, though we'll do that too. We're here because we know that healing happens in community, that the most powerful medicine is often the simple recognition that we're not alone in our struggles. She clicked to the next slide, which showed photos of the peer support groups that had formed over the past year. Anxiety support circles, social skills workshops, workplace confidence building groups, and even a public speaking club specifically for people with communication disorders. Over the past year, we've served over 300 individuals through our peer support programs, Maya said. But more importantly, we've created a community where people can bring their whole selves, including their struggles, and find acceptance, understanding, and practical tools for moving forward. She shared success stories, being careful to protect privacy while illustrating the profound impact of peer support. There was James, a college student who'd gone from being unable to speak in class to leading study groups. Sarah, a single mother who'd found her voice in custody proceedings after months of practice in their safe space. David, a veteran who'd learned to navigate social situations after years of isolation. But perhaps the most important thing we've learned, Maya said, advancing to a slide that simply read, healing is not linear, is that recovery doesn't mean becoming someone you're not. It means learning to be who you are, fully and unapologetically, while developing the tools to navigate a world that doesn't always understand or accommodate different ways of being. She paused, feeling the weight of the moment. I still have days when speaking feels impossible. I still practice conversations in my car before important meetings. I still feel my throat close up sometimes when I'm put on the spot. But I've learned that managing anxiety isn't about making it disappear completely. It's about developing strategies that help you live fully despite the anxiety, and surrounding yourself with people who understand and support your journey. After the formal presentation, the room broke into smaller discussion groups. Maya found herself gravitating toward a cluster of newer peer support specialists, people who were just beginning to share their stories and help others navigate similar challenges. Maya, called out Rebecca, a recent graduate of their program, who was now facilitating support groups for teens with selective mutism. I wanted to thank you for something you said during my first session here. You told me that my sensitivity wasn't a weakness to overcome, but a strength to harness. That completely changed how I saw myself. Maya felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest, the same feeling she'd experienced when Dr. Kim had first helped her reframe her understanding of anxiety. How are you doing with the teen groups? Better than I expected, Rebecca said, her eyes bright with excitement. There's something powerful about being able to look at a 16-year-old who thinks they're completely alone and say, I've been where you are, and I'm here to tell you that it gets better, and you're not broken. As the meeting wound down, Maya found herself in conversation with Dr. Kim, who had stayed behind to chat with several of the peer support specialists. I'm proud of you, Dr. Kim said simply, not just for the work you're doing, but for the person you've become. You've taken your experience and transformed it into something that helps others heal. I learned from the best, Maya replied, and meant it. You showed me that healing isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more fully yourself. Dr. Kim nodded thoughtfully. You know, I've been thinking about expanding our model. There are communities throughout the state that could benefit from this kind of peer support network. Would you be interested in helping develop a training program for other centers? Maya felt a familiar flutter of anxiety at the thought of taking on something so large, so public. But alongside the anxiety, she felt something else: excitement, purpose, the quiet confidence that came from knowing she had something valuable to offer. I'd love to, she said, but I have one condition. What's that? We make sure that every program includes the story of how it's possible to transform your struggles into your strengths. That people understand that the very things that made them feel different or broken might actually be the qualities that make them uniquely qualified to help others. Dr. Kim smiled. I wouldn't have it any other way. As Maya walked back to her office, she thought about the journey that had brought her here from a frightened young woman who couldn't speak up in meetings to someone who now spoke publicly about mental health, who helped others find their voices, who had learned that true strength sometimes comes not from speaking loudly, but from speaking honestly. The afternoon sun streamed through her office window, illuminating the small collection of thank you notes and cards that had accumulated on her desk over the past year. Each one represented a person who had found their way through the darkness, who had learned that they weren't alone, who had discovered that healing was possible. Maya settled into her chair and opened her laptop, ready to begin working on the proposal that would bring peer support services to communities across the state. The anxiety was still there, would probably always be there in some form, but it no longer defined her possibilities. She began typing, her fingers moving with the confidence of someone who had found not just her voice, but her purpose. Proposal for statewide peer support network, creating communities of healing through shared experience. Outside her window, she could see other staff members walking the garden path, some in animated conversation, others walking quietly alone, each person carrying their own struggles and strengths, their own stories of resilience and growth. Maya smiled and continued writing, knowing that every word she typed was another step toward a world where no one had to face their struggles alone, where healing happened in community, and where the most powerful medicine was often the simple recognition that someone else had walked the difficult path you were traveling, and that with the right support, it was possible to not just survive the journey, but to thrive along the way.